There seems to be a theme today on my social media, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, people talking about grief and how their body is handling grief. I just saw a video where she said she was sitting in the hospital trying to figure out what is wrong with her. And turns out that since her husband has died, grief may actually kill her. So I decided I want to address that, since that seems to be the topic of the day. I used to be of the mind that PPD and depression and all the emotions were just kind of like exaggerated and not real until it happened to me. And then when it happened to me, on the magnitude that it did, it was a life-altering spiritual war, if you will. You know, I've had things happen throughout my life that made me feel a type of way or whatever. And I just, put it in the back of my mind and moved on. Well, when we lost Sam, and I think it was like the combination of like how badly I wanted that baby and how badly I wanted the family unit that we were currently building at the time, in conjunction with like the reality, or let me say the feeling of like having everything stripped away so abruptly. Like, I could not wrap my mind around why would he provide me and give me all these things and then strip them away like that. Like, I remember sitting in the hospital bed. I had gone in for an ultrasound. I had finally convinced them to do weekly ultrasounds because I was so concerned. I know my body. I know what my body's capable of. I know what it will do, regardless of what's going on up here. We got there, and she made a joke about how he was laying, that his head was laying a little funky, and then she just walks out the room and comes back with a bunch of nurses. But little does she know, when she scanned across him, I had already seen that his heart had stopped on the monitor. I already knew what was going on. And when they came in and they had a charge nurse, whatever the head nurse of the floor is, confirmed, well, she didn't confirm. She said, he's not moving as much as we would like, so we're going to admit you. And I sat there for hours. I mean, literal hours before they came in and did like another 2 scans and then looked me in the eye and said that my baby's heart stopped. And that we don't know why these things happen, they just do. And Alex was out of town, and I had to call him from Shreveport, Louisiana, and he was somewhere in deep South Texas, and have him drive home because they were going to induce labor and have me go ahead and have him and give birth to him. And that was several hours of labor. And it wasn't like a hard labor or nothing like that. It was just, we were forcing my body to go into labor before it was ready. He wasn't due for a little while longer, but my body tends to go early as it is. So whatever. Besides the point. What I'm saying is, speaking from experience, grief, literally, like the grief that was mentioned in my algorithm today, it makes you feel like a part of you has died. It makes you feel like your heart is literally in shambles. Your heart literally aches. Your soul is in pieces. And then your mind is just broken. whatever bit of humanity I had left in me felt like it was just in shambles. I felt like a shell of a person. And you add the battle for my health on top of that, the surgeries, the court shit in the background that came later on as a result of me being down and sick and in the hospital left and right for that entire time period. Dude, my mental state, my spiritual state, my physical state was just gone. So when I'm telling people, like, my story, I don't really elaborate on so much the grief aspect of it or the emotional aspect of it. See, there's my little bald spot. It's growing back, though. I try not to elaborate too much because I don't really like talking about it. But today I just felt like, you know what? Let's have this conversation, because someone somewhere is going to either relate or someone somewhere is going to be like, I feel seen, right? I know what grief feels like of losing a child, right? I held my son's body for like an hour or two, and I stared at him, and I cried a lot, uncontrollably. I had to sit there during the labor process before I had him and make funeral arrangements for him. And I advocated not to have him biopsied is not the term I'm looking for. Autopsied, however you say it. We didn't want them to do that. We didn't trust them because, you know, a lot of what the world is today. The coroner came and picked him up and took him straight over there, and we had him cremated. This is him. That is Samuel. He sits right here on my desk. I remember his scent. I remember what his body felt like in my hands. And frankly, his appearance will never leave my mind. And let me tell you, the memory of going into the hospital and going through all that labor and pain and stuff, and for what I have going on with my body, labor pain is really minute for me. But let me tell you, through the sheer panic and fear, and then for him to be born, and it felt like the air was sucked out of the room. It felt like everyone gasped in unison, and it was just dead silent. I think that killed me the most, psychologically. I sat there and prayed hard to anybody that was listening at the moment in time that, you know, maybe it was just a flaw on the monitors and that he would be born fine. A bit early, but alive. I've seen babies survive, you know, all kinds of stuff. So, yeah, the grief that followed was just a whole new level of emotional distress, for lack of better terms. It was absolutely terrible. It was a really hard time for me. I was experiencing emotions that I haven't really allowed myself to experience before. My body was trying to give up. My mind was trying to give up. And I was just tired. Couldn't sleep because I was having nightmares. a lot of it still haunts me today. It's gotten a lot better. It's gotten a lot better. I have even ran into people younger than me who have gone through something similar. And what I've learned through all of this is it seems to be happening more frequently, which makes me very angry because it shouldn't be, right? There's no reason. We all know the reason, right? So I think that's why we push so hard for us to be our own advocates, because we know our bodies. A lot of these things could be prevented if someone had just listened in the first place, or if they had not drugged us in the first place with, synthetic hormones or whatever it is, shit hidden in the medicine, or whatever. I've learned that there's different forms of grief. My feelings toward death have changed. I've noticed that my feelings towards a lot of things have changed. I get kudos all the time, and I have people comparing themselves to me all the time because of how I outwardly carry myself. And that's something I've had to learn to do. I wouldn't say that is how it really is. So that's those things I've learned to do. Because if there's anything about myself that I have learned is that something that has happened frequently to a lot of people, that for whatever reason impacted me on a level that I can't even describe. There's a lot of feelings and emotion attached to it. And the reality of realizing that I was in the middle of a severe PPD, postpartum depression episode kind of thing. It wasn't just myself. It was my husband, and it impacted everybody in the family in one way or another. And still does. It was interesting to say the least. And then it led off into some big internal spiritual warfare with myself. And I really had to take time away and try to figure that out. And which also forced me to have to face things in my little box in the back of my mind that's been locked away for years that I never wanted to remember or acknowledge. So when I say it was an experience, it was the absolute experience. It was absolutely insane. And it took time. And I was forced to sit down and really feel all of it, all the emotions, the rage, the sadness, the pain, the hatred. I had to feel it all. And I'm an individual, I don't really like feelings. I prefer not to deal with them. But this whole thing it really made me have to sit down and really evaluate myself and sift through memories and experience emotions that I've never really allowed myself to experience. I deal with a lot of anger and lack thereof impatience nowadays, much more than used to. Over time I gotten to where I can be very patient. But after this, it was just gone. And I experience more anger than anything. I often get told that I don't allow myself to experience the happy moments. And I think that's another little psychological thing where you're afraid to be excited for something because you think it's just gonna get ripped away, right? I really wanted to talk about the physical pain that comes with grief. So this woman in that video, she was shaking. and I am very well familiar with the shaking. You're like shaking, your body's vibrating, you feel awful, excuse me. You know, your body's not cooperating, you probably got like an upset stomach, and you're getting migraines, and you're stressed out, and you can't control your emotions because your emotions are all over the place. For me, it was just sheer anger at anything, anyone, and they tried to put me on like antidepressants, and it just heightened it even more. Like hateful, and I had to wean myself off those and kind of seclude myself again during that time period. I would say that the feeling around grief, when they say your heart is broken, and I know some of us have probably seen that little animated video that talks about the little strings in your heart when they rip, and people dying of heartbreak. There's more science to that rather than it just being a like a phrase. But it's literal pain. It's real, right? And I don't think anyone who's never not experienced a grief of that magnitude, or pain of that magnitude, or emotion of that magnitude really understands it until they've been through it. It feels like having your soul ripped out, and then like an empty void. And then your mind shatters, and you're sitting there questioning reality, or what your purpose even is. I can't imagine losing a spouse, but I imagine if I lost my spouse, it would be tenfold what it was losing Sam. I got to hold Sam in my body. You know, I carried him for quite some time, and I felt like I got to know him very well. And then I had the luxury of holding him for however long I wanted. And I felt like a part of me died that day. Literally and figuratively. So to lose a spouse, I can only imagine, you know. I would never wish that on anybody. Much less a child. The pain is just absolutely awful. And then it lingers. It doesn't go away. You just learn to live with it. Some people, they never speak about it again, but they live with it in silence. Some people, they talk about it. Some of us had a calling that kind of forces us to kind of elaborate on it and share the story because it helps other people get through theirs. Grief sucks, and there's different forms of it. Sometimes you'll get someone that their spouse or someone died, and then they're up cleaning the house and doing their own thing. That's typically where I'm at. But that one changed my life. It changed my perspective. It changed my outlook. It changed who I am. So it's real. Don't let anyone ever, convince you otherwise. Because it's 100,000% real. And you're not alone. Whether it be, stillbirth, miscarriage, infertility issues, death of a family member, death of a pet. Just kind of depends on the person, right? What one person might consider to be important may not be what another person considers important, but to that person it's important, and that's all that matters. I think we live in a world where everyone's so quick to judge and comment about things that they have no idea about because it's not their life and they can't relate. And I think the world needs more grace, honestly. Mm-hmm. We're all out here feeling a type of way. We could all do better. and not take life for granted. And be careful what you say, because what you say holds power, whether you realize it or not. We're in a weird place in the world right now where I think, whether people want to admit it or not, the balance is a little fragile. There's a lot of pain in the air. There's a lot of anger and anxiety in the air around, I don't know, finances and deaths and drugs and the economy and people losing homes and war and all kinds of things. So I think we all really need to address each other with more grace and patience and acknowledgement. What may seem like a big deal to one person may not be a big deal to you, but it is to them, because in their life it may be a big deal, right? If you understand, what might be important to you may not be important to them, but to you it's important and a big deal, right? And you would expect to be treated and addressed a type of way. You would expect to be heard, right? So, anyways, you're not alone. It's real. I've been there. And I do advocate for changes to be made. And I do recognize grief sucks and it's painful. It's ugly. Sometimes you end up with the grief that you don't feel anything. Been there too. And I would say that's where a lot of the anger I was experiencing was coming from, because there was a point where I just didn't have any other feelings except for rage, and I had to work through that. Just a total disconnect with reality. Anyways, I just wanted to say, been there too, and there is a way out. You can find your way out. It's there. You just gotta look for it and find purpose. If you don't have the support system there, then you could always reach out to me. I have an amazing support system, thankfully, and I provide that support elsewhere to all of you guys as well. It's kind of what we do here. So yeah, you're not alone. What you feel is real. What is happening to you is real, but there is a way out, and it does get better. You just take some learning, I guess, to figure out how to cope, but it does get better.